Okay.
Hi, everybody, and welcome so much to Brindavani's 8th Annual Music Festival. We are so excited that you've joined us here, whether you're on Zoom or whether you are watching on the YouTube live stream.
Hi,
Thanks
everybody,
so much
and welcome so much to Brindavani.
Okay.
One second.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to try sharing your screen again? All right, apologies for the technical difficulties. Well, we are very excited to welcome Sreeram Venkat to Brindavani's annual festival this year. Sreeram has been instrumental as a volunteer in helping us plan this entire festival, and now we're very excited that he will be giving a lecture demonstration on trees in Carnatic music. And before I hand it over to Sreeram, I would once again like to encourage everybody to donate generously to Trees for Me, which is a wonderful youth-led organization based in New Jersey that aims to offset the impact of humans by planting trees on this earth. So please do donate generously. Thank you. And now I will hand it over to Sreeram.
पल्लवपदं मृदुदर्शस्य पल्लवपद मृदुदर्शस्य पाशाङ्कुशादिधरस्य पल्लवपद मृदुदर्शस्य पाशाङ्कुशादिधरस्य मल्लिका जाति चम्पक हारस्य मल्लिका जाति चम्पक हारस्य मणिमालस्य वल्लीविवाहकारणस्य गुरुगुहपूजितस्य काळिकलामालिनी कमलाक्षी संमुतस्य वल्लभनायकस्य भक्तो भवामि वाञ्छितार्थदायकस्य वरमूषिकवाहनस्य वल्लभनायकस्य भक्तो भवामि मल्लिका जाति चम्पकहारस्य. In Carnatic music, the Vagyakaras, composers and lyricists of Carnatic music, the great legends, Trinity, people such as Papanashram Shivan, Gopalakrishna Bharati, all of these people have incorporated many of the local flora trees, plants, flowers, and fruit into the compositions. Today, I would like to take some time to share with you how these plants have been woven throughout these compositions and how the significance of the plants and the history of those plants relates to the stories behind several of these Carnatic compositions. For example, I started the presentation with Vallabhanayakasya by Sri Muthuswami Dikshita in Ragam Begada. In the opening line of the Samashti Charanam, he begins with Pallava Pada Mrudu Tarasya. So that is comparing the feet of Lord Ganesha to very tender shoots of leaves as they're just beginning to emerge from the ground. And immediately after, you have the line Mallika Jati Champakharasya, which is, of course, describing the flower garlands of jasmine and champaka flowers that adorn Lord Ganesha, the Vallabha Ganesha, who is situated at the Tiruvarur temple. And so this is just an example, introductory example of how composers have incorporated several of the flora into their compositions. Throughout today's presentation, I'll be kind of focusing a little bit more towards Sri Muthuswami Dikshita's compositions, but also including compositions from Sri Tyagaraja, Sri Samasastri, and other composers as well. And I would like to begin by describing how trees themselves enter into the compositions. So in Sanskritam, there are several names of trees. The most common one, I think, is Vriksha, which just means tree. An interesting name for trees is the word Padapa. Pada in Sanskritam means foot, and Pa comes from the root Piba, which means to drink. Fruta, their pun not intended, but interesting one there. Padapa means one who drinks with their feet, and a tree's feet are like its roots. So trees absorb water through their roots, and this is why the name Padapa comes. And you can see that in several compositions. So other names for trees include Taru, Druma, or just Dhru. And Latika is an interesting one. It's not exactly tree. It is refers to a creeper or a vine. But oftentimes in compositions, I think the artists can take some like poetic license, and they also refer to trees as Latika. They can interchangeably use words like this here. So I included that because these types of words pop up through our compositions. And though these are all in the Sanskrit language, most of the languages such as the Telugu or Tamil, you will see very similar words being used for trees. Of course, in Tamil you have things like Mara, which means tree. But you can also see in many Telugu compositions, you will also see like basically words that look almost exactly like the words in Sanskrit. So I just included those ones here as an overview. So of course, any presentation about trees and Indian culture would be remiss if I wasn't going to mention the 5 celestial trees, beginning of course with the famous Kalpa Vriksha, and this is a celestial divine tree that emerged when the Devas and Asuras churned the Kalkal, the ocean of milk, and it is very, very often mentioned throughout several thousands of compositions in music. And the one I want to highlight here is actually using Sri Muthuswami Dikshita's composition Bajare Rechita in Ragam Kalyani. Here he uses Kalpa Latika, which is, as I referred to in the previous slide, Latika actually means creeper, but again here he's using it to mean Kalpa Vriksha. One thing to note about the celestial trees is that when they occur in the compositions, it's usually as a metaphor to describe how the Lord or the deity that the song is about is as compassionate and as giving as these trees are as famed to be. So, Bhakta Kalpalatikam Tvam Bhajare Chinta बालाम्बिकां भक्तं कल्पलतिकाम्. He describes the goddess Balambika, who is found at the Vaitishwaran Kol. He describes her as being as compassionate as the Kalpa Vriksha. The probably second most well-known tree is the Parijata Vriksham. It's an interesting story here. It also emerged while churning the ocean of milk, and it was taken to Lord Indra's abode. But during the Krishna Avatara, Krishna's wife, Sri Satyabhama Devi, asked Krishna if he could bring the Parijata Vriksha. And so Krishna actually went and kind of stole it from Indra. And so that's an interesting episode. And Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar again mentions this in the Kriti Rajagopalam Bhajeham. Parijata tarumulam pankajanayana vishalam parijata tarumulam. So one who sits at the base of the Parijata tree. So this one is interesting. Here he uses the word taru for tree. The next celestial tree that is probably the third most commonly known, I think, is the Mandara Vriksha. This one is said to relieve people of their physical and mental stresses and diseases. Again, I'm using Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar's compositions because I think he has written at least one composition that includes each of the 5 celestial trees. Most composers have, of course, incorporated at least these 3 trees here, the Kalpa Vriksha, Parijata Vriksha, Mandara Vriksha. But the next 2 trees I'm describing, I think, are a little bit more rare. But Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar has actually included a composition with at least one of each of the 5 trees. So in the Kriti Ganarajena Rakshitoham in Ragam Arabhi, he says, Dinakara Koti Prakashena Vinatashita Mandarena Dinakara Koti Prakashena Vinatashita Mandarena. So he, again, the thing to remember with the celestial trees is that when they're incorporated in compositions, it's often as a metaphor relating how the Lord is compassionate and giving like these trees. The Santana Vriksha is the next tree that I want to discuss. Santana Vriksha is a little bit more rare in the literature. Of course, the word Santana itself is used throughout several compositions to refer to children or progeny. Santana Gopala Krishnam, for example, refers to Lord Krishna as one who's able to bless people with a sustained progeny. And but the Santana Vriksha itself is, I think, a little bit more rare, mentioned in compositions. Sri Dikshidhar refers to it in the Santana Manjari Brihadishwari Kriti. But I think a more common occurrence of this is in actually the Kriti Oraju Puju Ju Shetinaima by Sri Tyagaraja. Dina Rakshaka Shata Manava Santana Gana Lola Santana Gana Lola. That place he refers to Lord Rama as compassionate as the Santana Vriksha. And finally, there's the Harichandana tree. Chandana, as you might know, is the sandalwood tree. This is a divine version of the sandalwood tree. It is well known for its fragrance and also its cooling effect, and it is known to dissuade evil spirits. And actually, Harichandana is more often used as just the word Chandana, and referring to it as in prayogas such as Bhakta Chandana. So Sri Dikshidhar again refers to it in the Natanarayana Kriti on Lord Ganesha Mahaganapate Palyashmam as Harichandana Maheshwara Guruguha Bhakta Chandana. And again, Bhakta Chandana is often the phrase that is used with this tree. So a more common occurrence people have probably heard is in the song Vandanamo Raghunandana by Sri Tyagaraja. Vandanamo Raghunandana Setu Bandhana Bhakta Chandana Rama Vandanamu. The Bhakta Chandana again is used there by Sri Tyagaraja. So These 5 trees are used, but often it again is referring to the qualities of the Lord that is described in the Kriti. Rather than the tree itself, they're comparing the Lord to the tree. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on the other trees, the physical trees that we can see here, and as how they relate to different compositions. So the first thing I wanted to discuss on that regard is some divine plants. Of course, probably the most famous divine plant that most people even have in their houses is tulasi. So tulasi is very special for Lord Vishnu, and Tyagaraja Swami has written several kritis on tulasi. In the Saveri kriti, Tulasi Jagajanani, in the Charanam of the kriti, he says, Charana Yugambulanu Nadulaku Parama Vaikunthamata. So at the feet of Sri Tulasi is the Vaikuntham itself. And the next line is Sarasijakshi Ni Madhyamu Sakala Suravasamata. So at the middle of the tree, all of the devas, the millions and millions of devas, are actually residing at the middle of the tree. And finally at the top of the tree, you have Shiramuna Naigama Kotulu Chelaguchunnaruata. So that is saying that the Vedas and Shastras themselves are residing at the top of the tree. So the Tulasi is so special in our culture that is and highly praised and revered by Sri Tyagaraja in this kriti. Tulasi Jagajanani Duritapaharani, even saying that Tulasi Devi can remove the sufferings and obstacles of her devotees. Similarly, in the kriti Amma Ravama, Sri Tyagaraja is asking Tulasi Devi to come and protect him and give him her grace. A composition most everyone is probably familiar with, Tulasi Dalamul Che Santoshamga. Sri Tyagaraja is describing how he wants to use several plants, flowers, Tulasi included, to worship Sri Rama. In the Charanam, you have Sarasi Ruha Punnaga Champaka Patala Kuravaka Karavira Mallika Sugandharaja Sumamul. So Tulasi Dala is in the Pallavi, but here we have Sarasiruha Punnaga. Sarasiruha is lotus. Punnaga is another type of flower. There are botanical names. The English names for a lot of these flowers are mainly the botanical names. They're I think even less familiar to us than like these names. So I'm going to stick with using the Indian traditional names for these flowers as much as possible, because I think at this point just bombarding you with a bunch of scientific names is not going to be useful. So we have Sarasiruha, lotus, Punnaga, Champaka, which is Champaka flowers, Kuravaka, which is henna or mardani, Karavira is the oleander, and Mallika is jasmine. Sugandha Raja. Sugandha means good smelling. So he wants to worship Sri Rama with all of these flowers, and he's describing how he's doing the puja like that. The next flower or next plant that is very special, this time for Lord Shiva, is the Bilva plant, Bilva tree. Everyone knows, I think, that Bilva is very special for Lord Shiva. In Sri Tyagaraja's kriti, Shiva Shiva Shiva, he says, Nemamuto Bilvachana Jesi Shiva 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 Yanarada. Bilvachana. So he says to do, he's describing doing Bilvachana to Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva's very favorite flower is the Bilva, a flower plant leaf here. An interesting thing actually is that, a little less well known, is that the Bilva tree is also special to goddess Lakshmi. In the kriti Kamakshi Varalakshmi by Sri Dikshitar, in the Anupallavi, he uses the phrase, he uses Sri Phale, which is referring to resident of the Bilva tree. And there's an interesting episode that occurred here. Of course, this reference to Mahalakshmi being associated or sitting under the Bilva tree is even mentioned in the Vedas, in the Sri Suktam, for example. But there's an interesting episode where during the time where a lot of the Mughal, I think, type of empire were raiding Hindu temples in the southern part of India and in Tamil Nadu especially, they were raiding temples and they were breaking the idols and destroying everything. And at this time, Sri Vedanta Desika was in Kanchipuram, the Varadaraja Perumal Kovil, and the people there, they were afraid that the raiders were going to destroy the temple. So in an effort to try to preserve the idols, they took the idols with them and then tried to went into hiding, and even they at some points they had to hide in graveyards and things like that. It was a very difficult time for them. But actually they couldn't hold the idols. They were very heavy idols. They had to walk long distances with them. So what they did was actually they placed the idol they hid the idol of Mahalakshmi under a bilva tree. And the reason they did that is they chose the bilva tree is because of this relevance of the bilva tree to goddess Sri Mahalakshmi. So that's an interesting significance there that is explored by Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar in the Kamakshi Varalakshmi Kriti. And of course, lotus flower occurs in basically every single composition you can think of. And in Sanskrit language, there are, I think, several dozens, if not hundreds, of synonyms for the lotus flower. So I'm listing a couple of them here. Sarasiruha, you have things like Sarasijanaba, Varanam even starts like that. Sarasiruha. Ambuja Naba is used a lot. Ambuja Naba refers to how the lotus is coming out of the navel of Lord Mahavishnu. Amboja is also used. Sadgati Daya Kamboja Charanam. In the Chatursa Agamarika of Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar, he uses Daya Kamboja Charanam. So this is an interesting place where he takes the Raga Mudra itself and puts it with the Amboja, referring to the feet of Lord Shiva there. Jalaja is used. Interestingly, this is a very unique phrase, synonym for lotus. I think, to my knowledge, Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar, who has composed most of his kritis in Sanskrit, has used a lot of the other synonyms listed here for lotus. He has not used Jalaja as much. I think in one place in the kriti Sri on Lord Agastya, that one he has used it, but not, I think, in any other kriti. I don't see Jalaja, that particular word, coming up. Please feel free to correct me if I'm incorrect on that. But my research, I did not find too many occurrences of that word in Sri Dikshidhar's compositions. On the other hand, Sri Maharaja Swadi Tirunal uses that a lot. I think it's one of the most commonly used things that he likes to use for Jalajanabha. He uses that a lot. For example, Kurume Kushalam Sada Jalajanabha Ganuje. He uses that there. Jalaja to mean the lotus is used by Sri Swadi Tirunal. Aravinda, of course, is used in, for example, Seshachal Nayakam Aravinda Patranayam is a very famous Naraval line. Everyone knows that one. Pankaja Lochana Kriti is there. Pankajakshi, things like that show up. Kamala is a very interesting one. You guys know the Vice President of the United States. That's an interesting one too. Then Kamala is also a very commonly used. Kamalakshi, this type of thing will come up. A very nice kriti in Ragam Nilambari describes from feet to the head of Lord Rama, compares basically like all of the different limbs of Lord Rama to a lotus. Kamala Charana Kamala Nabhamadhava Kamala Hasta Kamalambaka Keshavam Kamala Mukha Ambala Kamala Bandhavam Kamala Vadana Tarakandara Ramachandra Raghunandana Dasharathe. So that charanam is filled with the word Kamala. It's a very beautiful kriti. Unfortunately, I don't think the composer of this kriti is known. There are some guesses as to who it might be, but I think officially there's no consensus on the composer of this kriti. But that's again a very beautiful incorporation of the word Kamala into basically describing every part of Lord Rama as being associated with the lotus flower. So that's a very interesting one. And in all the other languages as well, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and there are even several more synonyms for lotus here, but we don't have the time to explore those, so I just included these for today's presentation. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to look for a tree, where are you going to look other than a forest, right? So, of course, we have to discuss some forests. I think there are 3 forests that I've chosen to describe in today's presentation. The first one of them is Brindavani. This is the forest where Lord Krishna grew up. It's near Mathura, kind of close to Delhi in northern India. Brinda actually means Tulasi. So Brindavana means forest of Tulasi. So there's a lot of wild Tulasi growing in this forest. And this is the site of the Rasa Leela events described by Sri Jayadeva in the Ashtapati. So for example, in the Ashtapati Lalita Lavanga, he writes, Mృగమధ సౌరభ రభసవశం వద నవదళమాలతమాలే యువజన హృదయ విదారణ మనసిజ నఖరుచి కింశుకజాలే రాధే విహరతి హరిరిహ. So he describes the different flowers and trees here. The Tamala and Kinshuka trees are the ones being described here. Again, these have like English botanical names. I'm just referring to them by the Indian traditional names. And he describes the smell of the flowers, and he says that the red flowers, the Kinshuka flowers, he compares them to the redness of Shri Krishna's fingernails. And he's saying that they are red because he has pierced the hearts of his lovers with his nails. So it's a very, the Ashtapati Gita Govinda is a very beautiful and poetic set of compositions that describe the Rasa Leela which occurred in the Brindavana, and is very significant to Sri Krishna. Pictured above here is the Lord at Sri Brindavana, Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Other compositions, you have things like Brindavana Lalla by Sri Tyagaraja. Utukad Venkata Kavi has written Balakrishnan in Ragam Dhanyasi. Gokulam Brindavanam Yamuna Vihari Gopalam Gokulam Brindavanam Yamuna Vihari Gopalam. That is a very nice composition by Sri Utukad Venkata Kavi, describing how Sri Krishna grew up in Gokulam around Brindavanam, around the Yamuna river. And of course, Sri Maharaja Swadi Tirunal has composed Pankaja Lochana, and I think the traditional Naraval line there is Vrindavananta Krita Vividha Sukha Vihara Vrindavananta Krita. So that is a very beautiful composition there. The scope for even the Naraval you can do beautifully there. Centered around the line of this Brindavana, how Krishna liked to play in the Brindavana. These things are described, I think, in great detail in the Bhagavatam, Narayaniam compositions such as this, and the composers have brought that to light by beautifully tuning the words and setting them to music in such a way that we can explore that and hopefully see a glimpse of those stories as we sing the Kritis. The next forest I want to discuss is the Kadambavana. This is located near present-day Madurai. So you can see pictured here on the top right is a picture of a Kadamba tree which is in fruit. It has this yellow type of orb-looking fruit. Kadambavana is in Madurai. Madurai Meenakshi is very famous for being the Kadamba Vanvasi. Kadambavana is used. Kadamba Kanana is also used in a lot of Sri Dikshita's Kritis. Most of the Kritis about Sri Meenakshi Devi include some relation to Kadambavana in them. So yeah, this is one time I've actually included the botanical name here. You can read it. So one very interesting fact is in the Shama Sastri's Amba Kamakshi Bhairavi Swarajati, you have the second to last Sarasahityam, which is Ni Pavana Nilaya Surasamudaya Karavidhrata Kuvalaya Ambani Pavana. So Originally, actually, when I learned this song, I thought it was Ni Pavananilaya, which is like you residing in the air. But actually, no, it is Nipa Vananilaya. So that is Nipa Vana is also is a reference to the Kadamba Vana. So this is a song on goddess Kamakshi, but this is all Ambal. So he's also referring to Ambal as being residing in the Kadamba Vana there. Nipa Vana is referred to as the Kadamba Vana. Kadamba Vanavasini is included in as one of the namas in the Lalita Sahasranamam. In addition, it is included in the Saundarya Lahari, in the 8th Sloham, composed by Sri Harishankara Bhagatpadacharya. And in this one, the second line says Nipopa Vanavati Chintamani Grahe. So the slogan goes like Sudha Sindhor Madhye Suravita Pivati Parivrite Panidvipe Nipopa Vanavati Chintamani Grahe Shivakare Malche Shivakare Manche Paramashiva Paryanka Nilayam Bhajanti Tvam Dhanya Katichana Chidanandalakari Manidvipe Nipopa Vanavati Chintamani Grahe. So he includes that there. And of course, Sri Muthuswami Dikshita has included Kadamba Vanavasini in basically, I think every one of his kritis on Sri Meenakshi Devi, he I think incorporates one of references to Kadamba Vana. And in, of course, his magnum opus is Meenalochani Pasamochani Manini Kadamba Vanavasini Meenalochani Pasamochani Manini Kadamba Vanavasini So, in that magnum opus of a kriti on goddess Meenakshi, he says, Meenalochani, Pasamochani. Meenalochani is referring to Meenakshi. Eyes like wide like a fish. And Pasamochani, one who removes us from the bonds of our suffering. Manini Kadamba Vanavasini. So, there he is referencing that line there. And that line is a very special line, as I think everyone here probably knows. The next forest that I want to discuss is the Daruka Vanam. So this is, I think, a little bit less well known than the other two previous forests. This Daruka Vanam is located around percentage Rambam. There used to be a bunch of sages who lived there, and these sages were followers of the Mimamsa tradition, which means that they believe in the Vedas and like doing karma and things like that, but they don't actually believe in the significance or relevance of God. So there was this bunch of sages who were following this type of tradition who lived there, and Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu wanted to teach them like why the significance of God is important in addition to doing all of the karma and things. So Lord Shiva appeared as a bhikshartana, as someone who's asking for alms, and Lord Vishnu appeared as in Mohini avatar as a beautiful woman, and Lord Shiva basically attracted all of the wives of the sages away, and Lord Vishnu attracted all of the sages themselves with her beauty. And once the sages found out about this, they got really mad. So they started a yajna, and they wanted to destroy Lord Shiva because he's trying to mess with their lifestyle. So they started this yajna, and they wanted to create demons out of this yajna. Of course, Lord Shiva defeats all of these evil forces, and in fact turns all of the evil forces sent against him into abharanas that he's wearing as Lord Nataraja. So as you can see in this picture of Lord Nataraja, there's the demon who Lord Nataraja is stepping upon. This is the demon that was created from this the yajna that was made by these sages. He's holding fire in his in the top right hand, his left hand, but right, he's holding fire, which is from the yajna. He has snakes adorning all of his body. He's wearing a tiger skin, and he also holds a small deer. The deer was also came out of this fire. So when Lord Shiva was attracting the sages' wives away from the forest, Muthuswami Dikshidhar composed a kriti that references this in a Marakoti, in Raga Marabhi. Daruka manata podhana taruni mohakara bhikshatana veshadhara shankara mara koti lavanya. So there he's referencing to how in the Darukavana, Lord Shiva is attracting all of the wives of the rishis away. And finally, when he's holding Lord Shiva is holding the deer that came out of this this yajna, Muthuswami Dikshidhar composes in the Ragamalika, Chadudasa Ragamalika, the Saranga Charanam goes like Daruka Vanata Podhana Kalpita Sarangadharam. So, Saranga means deer, and so he's saying that Lord Shiva is holding the deer that is created out of the Yogagni of the sages who were living in the Darukavana. So that is an interesting episode that happened here. So these are the three forests, Brindavana, Kadambavana, and Darukavana, that have been referenced in compositions. So finally we come to Sthala Vrikshas. Sthala Vrikshas are vrikshas, trees, that have significance to the specific temple or the shrine at a temple. And Sri Muthuswami Dikshidhar especially has composed several kritis that reference these Sthala Vrikshas. First of which is in Kirvelur, is in the shrine of Keraliyappar and Vanamulai Nayaki, the famous song Akshayalinga Vibho. The Naraval line is usually Badari Vanamulai Nayika Sahita Badari Vana. Badari Vana is the Badari Vriksham, which is it is known as in the Indian Jujube tree or the Elandapayam in Tamil. This is referenced in the Akshayalinga Vibhokriti. In Tiruvarur, the Dakshinamurti shrine is Lord Dakshinamurti is always depicted sitting as under a banyan tree. And so beautifully in the composition, Sri Dakshinamurti, Muthuswami Dikshidhar writes, Akshaya Suvarna Vata Vrikshamula Sthite. Akshaya Suvarna Vata Vrikshamula Sthite. The golden banyan tree. He's sitting under the golden banyan tree. Similarly, in another song about Sri Dakshinamurti at Tanjavur in Ragam Phenadyuti, he says Nyagrodha Vriksha Mula Vasinam. Nyagrodha Vriksha is another name for banyan tree. Banyan trees are often used to refer as Sri Dakshinamurti is sitting under, but another place it comes up is Lord Krishna gives an appearance as Alalai Krishnan. Alamaram is the Tamil word for banyan tree, and Lord Krishna as a baby gives an appearance on a banyan leaf to I think Rishi Markandeya. So this is referenced, for example, in Sri Krishna Bhajamana says Pankaja Sanadi Deva Mahitam Shri Guru Guha Vihitam Rama Sahitam Pankaja Dhala Nayanam Vatashayanam. So Sri Krishna is sleeping on the banyan leaf. Jambupate, Jambunathar itself means the lord of the Naval Prayam. In Tamil, what is it called? The Jambu tree, I think it's called in English. And finally, there is in Tiruvarur, there is a shrine one of the Tiruvaru Panchalinga Kritis. This is the Hatikeshwara shrine. The Shiva there is seated under the Patala Vriksha. Patala Vriksha is the trumpet flower, and this is referenced in the Kriti Hatikeshwaram, Ragam Bilahari. Patali Padapam. So that the Swarakshram is even there, but Padapa, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, means tree, one who drinks with their feet. So this is a very nice incorporation there. Couple more special trees. Kanchipuram, Ekambra Nathar even means Lord of the Lone Mango Trees. You can see here, this is a picture of the mango tree at Kanchipuram. Ekamreshwara is there. Chintaya Makanda Mula Kandam. So it's Chintaya Makanda Mula. Makanda is mango tree, so one who sits at the base of the mango tree. And another Kriti, he also refers to this as Dikshitar, refers to this as Oshadhi Mula. In the Tirupugal at Swami Malai, Murugan is said to be surrounded by groves of mango trees in the Padi Madinati. Sudamigavala Solai Marvasuvami Malai Tanil Uraiwane. So that is in Padi Madinati Tirupugal. And Chidambaram is famous for some coconut trees. And Sri Gopalakrishna Bharati writes, Tennam Solai Tayai Kunten Poliyur. So that in the Kriti Yennaramam in Devagandhari Ragam, he mentions the coconut trees. A special thing at Tiruchendur is the Patra Vibhuti. So this is Yile Vibhuti given on a paneer tree leaf, Vibhuti, and it's believed to cure all different types of ailments. So this is very special. And in the Kriti, Shri Subramanya Mam Rakshato, Dikshita writes, Patra Vibhuti Pradana Nibuna Shri Subramanya Mam Rakshato. So this is a reference to the Patra Vibhuti at Tiruchendur is very famous. And another tree that is mentioned again in our Tirupugal is the Tirukkuravadi tree in Tiruvadaikari. I think this is a famous Tirupugal Marukkulavia. Tirukkuravadi Nizhal Tanil Uraivaane. Tirukkuravadi Nizhal Tanil Uraivaane. Tirukkuravadi, so under the shadow of the Tirukkuravadi tree. So these are several other special trees. I think we're running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to wrap up here. And by concluding with, I think everyone here, if you're familiar with gone to Chennai, gone to Mylapore, you have seen the Karpagamba temple. Karpagamba itself is saying, the name comes from the Karpa Vriksham. The Ambal is compassionate like the Karpagamba. Karpaga Vriksham is the comparison there, goddess of the wish yielding tree. Karpagame Kanparai, Karpagame Kade Kanparai, Tirumailai Karpagame. So, with that, I will conclude the presentation with the Karpagambar. Thank you everyone for listening. I apologize for any mistakes or any incorrect knowledge on my part. I like to thank all my gurus and everyone for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, and thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them either now or in the chat if you have time later. Thank you.